I stood in front of the house that used to be mine, my hands shaking as I held the official documents. It was done. The papers were signed. The house that once belonged to my parents now legally belonged to me. I had sold it. Every brick, every memory, every echo of their laughter in that kitchen, it was gone. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just stood there, numb, as the real estate agent congratulated me. The same way people had congratulated my parents when they sold my house while I was thousands of miles away, completely unaware. But this time, things were different. This time, I made sure every step was legal, every detail perfect, every loophole covered. My parents had played me once, but they didn't realize I had learned from them. As I turned to leave, I saw a sold sign being planted in their front yard. I could already picture their faces when they'd return home and see it. They thought I'd forgive them. They thought I'd move on. But they were wrong. Because when you take away someone's home, you don't just take their shelter. You take their peace, their safety, their trust. And I was done being the nice son. That was the moment I realized revenge doesn't always have to be loud. It can be silent, cold, and perfectly legal. But before you judge me, you need to understand how it all started. My name's Ethan Parker, and I've always believed in kindness. My parents raised me to help others, to never turn my back on family. I took those lessons to heart, maybe too much. When I got my first job after college, a software developer position at a startup in Seattle, I sent money home every month. I paid their bills, helped fix the roof, and even cover their medical expenses when Dad got sick. It didn't bother me. I loved them. They were my parents. When I finally bought my first house, I felt like I was giving back. It wasn't big, just a cozy 3-bedroom place on the outskirts of town. It had a white porch swing, a tiny garden, and a leaky faucet I never got around to fixing. I used to call it my little dream. Mom cried when she saw it. Dad clapped me on the back and said he was proud. That moment meant everything to me. Then came the job opportunity in Germany, a 1-year project that could skyrocket my career. I hesitated at first. I didn't want to leave my house or my parents for that long. But Mom insisted. "Ethan," she said, smiling, "you've worked so hard for this. Don't worry about us. Go chase your dreams." So, I did. I packed my bags, locked up the house, and left the keys with my parents, just in case they needed to check on things while I was gone. It was supposed to be a temporary goodbye. The first few months in Germany were incredible. I was learning, growing, and making connections. I'd call home every week. Sometimes they wouldn't answer, but I figured they were busy. When they did, Mom sounded distracted, and Dad would rush me off the phone. I thought nothing of it. Until one afternoon, 6 months in, I got a message from my neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins. She was like a grandmother to me, always keeping an eye on the place. Her text read, "Ethan, I saw a moving truck at your house. Everything okay, dear?" My heart dropped. I called her immediately. She told me strangers had moved in 2 weeks ago. My car was gone. My furniture was gone. Even my garden gnome, gone. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe my parents had rented the place out without telling me. But something in my gut twisted when I tried calling them, and both their phones went straight to voicemail. I emailed them. Texted. Nothing. The next morning, I got an email from my bank. The subject line read, "Account changes notification." My balance was 0. Every cent of my savings. Gone. Panic took over. I stayed up all night trying to contact the bank, the realtor, anyone who could explain what was happening. That's when I learned the horrifying truth. My house had been sold. By my parents. They'd forged my signature on the documents. Somehow, they convinced the realtor it was a joint property and transferred the funds to their account. I remember staring at the screen, feeling the walls close in. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst. My own parents. The people who taught me about honesty, love, and doing the right thing. Why would they do this? I called every mutual contact we had. No one knew where they were. It was like they'd vanished. For weeks, I barely ate. I couldn't focus at work. My boss noticed something was wrong and gave me time off. I spent that time reading every legal document I could find. I talked to lawyers, police, and property experts. But every one of them said the same thing. Because of the way the papers were filed, it would take years to challenge in court. I didn't have years. I barely had the strength to get through a day. But then, something changed. One night, while scrolling through old family photos, I found a picture of me as a kid. I was holding a handmade card that said, "To Mom and Dad, you're my heroes." I remember making that card. I remember believing every word on it. And for the first time in months, I didn't cry. I felt something colder instead. Resolve. If they could use my kindness against me, I could use their arrogance against them. I started digging into property records, tax documents, anything with their names on it. That's when I learned they had recently bought a new house, a big one, in a quiet suburban neighborhood. Paid for, no doubt, with my money. I could have gone to the police. I could have gone public. But I didn't. I wanted justice, not chaos. So, I spent months studying real estate laws. I learned every loophole, every technical detail. Then I found one, a legal clause that allowed a co-financier of a property, which I happened to be for their old home, to make certain claims if proof of financial dependency existed. I had receipts, bank transfers, years of proof. It took me half a year to prepare everything. And when the moment came, I filed the paperwork quietly, efficiently, perfectly. My parents never saw it coming. Now, as I watched the sold sign stand tall in their yard, I couldn't tell if I felt satisfaction or sadness. Maybe both. Because deep down, I didn't want revenge. I wanted answers. I wanted to know why the two people who gave me life decided to take mine apart piece by piece. And I knew, when they finally found out what I had done, they would come looking for me. But this time, I'd be ready. That night, I drove back to my apartment, my phone buzzing with unread messages. One from my lawyer confirming the sale was complete. Another from an unknown number. I opened it. "Ethan, we need to talk. It's about the house." No name. No context. Just that. My chest tightened. I knew that number. It was my mother's. And just like that, everything I had planned started to feel a lot less certain. The phone buzzed again, lighting up the dark room. I stayed at the screen for what felt like forever. Her name wasn't saved anymore, but I didn't need to see it. I could recognize my mother's number anywhere. My hand hovered over the phone. Part of me wanted to answer, to scream, to ask why. But another part, the tired, broken part, wanted to throw the phone against the wall and never hear her voice again after everything they'd done. How could she text me as if it were just another casual family chat? I took a deep breath and forced myself to sit down on the edge of my bed. The city lights glowed faintly through the window blinds, slicing the room into thin, pale lines of gold and gray. My heart was racing, and my throat felt dry. Another message popped up. "Please, Ethan. We need to explain." Explain? There was no explanation good enough. Not for selling my house. Not for emptying my account. Not for vanishing for months while I sat in a foreign country, broke and alone. But curiosity, it's a cruel thing. No matter how much you try to ignore it, it whispers. It pulls at you. And I needed to know why. I unlocked my phone and typed back, my fingers shaking slightly. What is there to explain? I hit send and stayed at the screen. A few seconds later, the typing dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. "Please meet us tomorrow, 10 a.m., at the old cafe on Brook Street. Just you. It's important." Brook Street. That was the cafe Dad used to take me to after Little League games. He'd buy me a slice of chocolate pie and tell me that success wasn't about money, it was about doing the right thing, even when no one's watching. The irony made me sick. I didn't reply. I just turned off my phone and sat there in silence for a long time, trying to calm my mind. But sleep wouldn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that sold sign, that empty look on the real estate agent's face when she asked, "Are you sure you're okay selling this property?" I wasn't okay. Not even close. Morning came too soon. I hadn't slept, but I still went. Maybe I just wanted to see them, to look them in the eye and hear the lies for myself. Maybe I wanted closure. Or maybe I just wanted proof that they still had hearts beating inside their chests. When I reached the cafe, it felt like stepping into an old photograph. The smell of coffee, the sound of the door chime, It hadn't changed in years. But the people sitting at the table in the corner weren't the parents I remembered. Mom looked older, thinner. Her hair was grayer, and her eyes had dark circles beneath them. Dad looked worse. His shoulders slumped, and his usual confident smile was gone. They both looked up when I approached. "Ethan," Mom whispered, her voice trembling. I didn't sit. I just stood there, staring. "You sold my house." She flinched, as if the words were a slap. Dad cleared his throat. "Son, please, sit down. Let's talk." "I don't want to sit," I snapped. "Just tell me why. Why did you do it?" Mom's eyes filled with tears. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "We didn't have a choice," she said softly. "There's always a choice," I said. "You just made the wrong one." Dad rubbed his temples. "Ethan, listen. You were gone for months. Your mother, she got sick. The hospital bills." I interrupted, my voice shaking. "I was sending money every month." He looked down. It wasn't enough. Mom finally spoke. "We were desperate. The bank was threatening to take our home. And when you left, we thought maybe you didn't care anymore." I stayed at her, my mouth dry. "Didn't care? I called you every week. I sent you money. You told me to go chase my dreams." Tay slid down her cheeks. "We made a mistake. A terrible one. But we thought we could fix it before you found out. We planned to buy it back once we got back on our feet. By stealing my savings." I asked. Neither of them answered. The silence between us was deafening. The hum of the coffee machine, the soft jazz music, it all felt like background noise in a nightmare I couldn't wake from. Finally, Dad said, "We were ashamed, Ethan. That's why we didn't answer your calls. We didn't know how to face you." I wanted to yell, to tell them they didn't deserve forgiveness. But when I looked at them, broken, regretful, human, I couldn't find the anger. Only exhaustion. "You ruined my life," I said quietly. "Do you know what it feels like to lose everything you worked for? To wake up one day and realize the people you trusted most were the ones who destroyed you." Mom sobbed quietly. Dad looked away, blinking rapidly. I sighed, turned, and walked toward the door. "Ethan, please," Mom called out. "We just wanted you to understand." I paused for a moment but didn't look back. "You should have thought about that before you sold my home." And then I left. The next few weeks were a blur. I buried myself in work, trying to pretend everything was fine. But at night, the memories came back. The betrayal, the confusion, the guilt for even thinking about revenge. Because deep down, I still loved them. No matter what they did, a part of me would always be that little boy who believed his parents were heroes. But love doesn't erase consequences. I got a call from my lawyer one morning confirming that the sale of my parents' house was final. It was official. There was no going back now. He said, "You did everything right, Ethan. They can't touch this. It's perfectly legal." Legal. The word felt heavy. Cold. It wasn't about justice anymore. It was about power. I hung up and stared at my reflection in the mirror. I didn't look like myself anymore. My eyes were tired, my face pale. I wondered if revenge had changed me. Then, that afternoon, something unexpected happened. A letter arrived. No return address. Just my name written in shaky handwriting on the envelope. I opened it carefully. Inside was a folded piece of paper and an old photo. Me, Mom, and Dad at the beach, smiling, sunburnt, happy. The letter read, "Dear Ethan, if you're reading this, it means we've lost your trust completely. We don't expect forgiveness. We just want you to know that what we did wasn't out of greed. It was out of fear. We were scared of losing everything. We didn't realize we were losing you in the process. Whatever happens, we love you. Mom." I read it twice, then 3 times. I didn't know what to feel. Part of me wanted to believe her. But another part remembered that actions spoke louder than words, and their actions had cost me everything. I put the letter down and took a walk outside. The air was crisp, the sky turning gold as the sun set. People passed me on the sidewalk, laughing, holding hands, living their lives. And for the first time, I realized how lonely I'd become. I'd built my entire world around work and the idea of revenge. But what was left now that I had both justice and emptiness? A few days later, I got a call from Mrs. Jenkins, my old neighbor. "Ethan, dear," she said gently, "your parents are back in town. They've been staying at that old motel on Maple Road." My stomach tightened. "Did they say anything?" "They looked lost," she said. "Your mom asked me if you were okay. She said she just wants to talk." I thanked her and hung up. I knew I should have ignored it, but something inside me, maybe guilt, maybe pity, pushed me to go. That evening, I drove to the motel. It was small, the kind of place with flickering lights and faded paint. I parked and sat in the car for a few minutes, trying to gather the courage. Then I saw them through the window, my parents, sitting side by side on the edge of a bed, holding hands. They looked fragile. I almost left, but before I could, Dad looked up and saw me. His eyes widened. He stood slowly and walked to the door. "Ethan," he said quietly, stepping outside. I didn't move. Mom appeared behind him, tears already streaming down her face. "We heard you sold the house," she whispered. I didn't answer. She took a shaky breath. "We deserved it. Every bit of it. But please, Ethan, we don't have anywhere to go." Her voice cracked, and something inside me twisted painfully. Dad added, "We can't ask for forgiveness, but we're still your parents. Can we at least explain everything properly this time?" I stared at them, my heart pounding. Part of me wanted to walk away, to let them feel what I felt. But another part, the part that still remembered bedtime stories and family dinners, couldn't. "Fine," I said. "Explain." They looked at each other, then back at me. Mom began. "After you left for Germany, the hospital bills piled up faster than we expected. I needed surgery, and we didn't want to worry you." Dad continued. "The insurance didn't cover half of it. The bank threatened to foreclose on our house, and then an investor approached us about your property. We told him it wasn't ours, but he offered cash up front, said he could close in 2 weeks. We thought we'd just borrow against it temporarily, pay it back later. We didn't realize how deep we were until it was too late." He sighed heavily. "We didn't mean to steal from you, son. We thought we could fix it before you found out." Their voices cracked with regret. I could see they were telling the truth. Maybe not the whole truth, but enough. I didn't say anything. I just stood there, staring at the ground. Mom stepped closer. "We know what we did can't be undone. But please, Ethan, don't hate us." I looked up slowly, my voice barely above a whisper. "I don't hate you." Her face brightened for a second, until I added, "But I don't trust you either." Tears welled in her eyes again. Then, before any of us could say another word, there was a sudden knock on the motel room door. 3 sharp knocks. Dad frowned and went to open it. Standing outside was a man in a gray suit, holding a folder. His tone was polite but firm. "Mr. and Mrs. Parker." "Yes," Dad said cautiously. The man handed him a paper. "You've been served. You have 30 days to vacate the premises. The new owner requires possession." My blood ran cold. I hadn't expected it to happen that fast. Mom turned pale. "What? But this can't be." The man just nodded, tipped his hat, and left. Dad's hands shook as he looked at the notice. His eyes lifted to meet mine. "Ethan," he whispered. Did you know about this?" The air grew heavy, silent, suffocating. I didn't move, didn't speak. Because the truth was, yes, I did know. I had set everything in motion myself. And now, the consequences were standing right in front of me. For a long moment, the 3 of us stood there, frozen in that small, dim motel room. The hum of the air conditioner was the only sound cutting through the heavy silence. My father held the eviction notice in his trembling hands, his eyes flicking over the words again and again like he couldn't believe they were real. My mother sat on the edge of the bed, her face pale, her fingers twisting nervously in her lap. And me? I just stood near the doorway, numb. My throat was dry, my mind blank. I had imagined this moment so many times, how I'd feel when justice was finally served, how I'd watch them face the consequences of what they'd done to me. But standing there, seeing them look so small and helpless, I didn't feel victorious. I felt empty. Dad's voice broke the silence. Ethan, he said, almost whispering. Did you know about this? His tone wasn't angry. It wasn't even accusing. It was fragile, like he already knew the answer but was praying I'd say no. I swallowed hard, staring at the paper in his hands. Yes, I said finally. Mom gasped, covering her mouth. Ethan, no, you didn't. I met her eyes. I did. The words hung in the air like a blade. Dad's jaw tightened. So this was your doing. You sold our home. It was my legal right, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. You used my money to buy it. You sold my house and emptied my account. I didn't break the law. I just took back what was mine. He stepped closer, his face red. Do you have any idea what you've done? Where are we supposed to go? We have nothing left. Welcome to my world, I said quietly. Now you know how it feels. For a moment, I thought he was going to hit me. His hands clenched at his sides, and his chest rose and fell with sharp breaths. But then he just turned away and sat down beside Mom, burying his face in his hands. I wanted to leave. I wanted to turn around, walk out that door, and never look back. But something in me froze. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was the sound of my mother crying softly beside him. You didn't have to do this, she said through tears. You could have talked to us. We were wrong, but we're still your parents. Parents don't sell their child's home behind their back, I snapped. Parents don't drain their savings and disappear. You didn't just take money from me, you took everything I worked for, everything I trusted you with. She sobbed harder. We thought we'd have time to make it right. I shook my head. You had time. You just chose not to use it. The weight of my own words hit me like a punch to the chest. I turned, reached for the door handle, and paused. The papers are final. You have 30 days. I'm sorry, but I can't undo it. Then I walked out, shutting the door softly behind me. The cool night air hit my face as I stepped outside. I didn't realize how tense I'd been until my shoulders started to ache. The neon motel sign flickered above me, casting flashes of red and white on the cracked pavement. As I walked to my car, my phone buzzed. It was my lawyer, Thomas. Hey, Ethan, he said when I answered. I just wanted to confirm. You got the notification that the eviction notice was served, right? Yeah, I said quietly. They got it. There was a pause on the other end. You okay? I hesitated. I don't know. Thomas sighed. You did everything by the book. What they did to you was criminal, Ethan. You could have pressed charges, but you didn't. What you did was fair. Fair, I repeated, staring at the ground. It doesn't feel fair. Revenge never does, he said softly. It only looks good on paper. We hung up, and I sat in my car for a while, just listening to the quiet. The street was empty, the night thick with a kind of stillness that made every thought louder. I thought about the little house I used to own, the one with a white porch swing. I thought about how proud my parents had been when they saw it for the first time. I thought about the way Mom had hugged me and said, "You're our success story." And now here we were, a broken family held together by nothing but resentment and regret. I started the car and drove aimlessly through town. The city lights blurred past as memories flooded my mind. Birthdays, holidays, Sunday dinners, all the moments that once defined home. It felt like a lifetime ago. Eventually, I found myself parked outside my old street. My house, the one they sold, was still there, but it wasn't mine anymore. The new owners had painted it blue and planted fresh flowers in the front yard. A little boy's bicycle leaned against the porch railing. I sat there for a long time, watching through the windshield. The lights inside flickered as a family laughed together around the dinner table. That used to be me. I leaned back in my seat, closing my eyes. You did this, Ethan, I whispered to myself. You're the one who made the choice. But deep down, I wasn't sure if I'd made the right one. The next day, I woke up to several missed calls from Mom. I ignored them. Then she sent a text. Please, Ethan. We're sorry. Can we just talk one more time? Please. I stared at the screen, torn. Part of me wanted to block her number forever. But another part, the same one that had gone to the motel, wanted to hear her out. Maybe I just needed closure. That evening, I finally replied. Meet me at the park by the lake. Tomorrow, 5 p.m. She responded almost instantly. We'll be there. The next day was gray and windy. The sky hung heavy with clouds, the air carrying that faint smell of rain. I got to the park early and sat on a bench overlooking the water. Ducks glided across the lake, their ripples spreading in perfect circles. I tried to rehearse what I'd say, something calm, something final. But every time I pictured their faces, my chest tightened. At 5:10, they arrived. Mom wore a heavy coat, and Dad looked like he hadn't slept in days. Thank you for meeting us, Mom said quietly. I nodded but didn't speak. Dad started, we just wanted to say we understand. We do. We know you had every right to do what you did. We hoped maybe there was still a chance to fix things between us. Fix things, I said, shaking my head. There's nothing to fix. You can't undo what's been done. Mom's voice trembled. We know, but we can try to make it right. How? I asked. You can't buy trust back. She looked down at her hands. We can't give you your house back, or your money, but we can tell you the truth about why everything happened. My brow furrowed. The truth? You already told me you sold it for hospital bills. Dad glanced at Mom, then took a deep breath. That's only part of it. He looked away toward the lake. There was someone else involved. The investor who bought your house, he wasn't a stranger. He was my old business partner, Mike Reynolds. The name made my stomach twist. I remembered Mike. He was the guy who came to our house for barbecues when I was a kid, always wearing flashy watches and talking about big deals. Dad had once told me they stopped working together after a bad falling out. What does he have to do with this? I asked. Dad's jaw tightened. He offered us a way out. He knew about your property, said he could buy it quickly and help us invest the money to double it. We thought we could use that to pay the bills and buy it back later. Mom's voice cracked. He promised he'd help, but he lied. He took everything. The money, the house, even our savings. We were too embarrassed to tell you. I just stared at them, stunned. So, you're telling me you got scammed? Dad nodded slowly. Yes, by someone we thought was family. I laughed bitterly. Funny. That's exactly how I felt about you. He winced but didn't argue. Mom wiped her eyes. We didn't know how to fix it, Ethan. We were so ashamed. Every day we waited to call you, but the longer we waited, the harder it got. The wind picked up, scattering leaves across the path. I looked down at the ground, my emotions twisting between anger and pity. You could have told me, I said. I would have helped. I would have found a way. Dad nodded slowly. We know. And that's what hurts the most. For a moment, none of us spoke. The lake rippled softly, and a single tear rolled down Mom's cheek. Please, Ethan, she whispered. We just want to make things right. We'll do whatever it takes. I looked at them, really looked. They weren't the monsters I'd imagined for months. They were flawed, desperate, and broken. And maybe they had been punished enough. But before I could answer, Dad's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, frowning. Then his face went pale. Who is it? I asked. He didn't reply. He just showed me the phone. The message read, You took my money, Parker. I want it back. You have 48 hours. Mike, he whispered. He found us. My stomach dropped. What does he mean? His money. Dad swallowed hard. We borrowed from him again last year. We thought we could make small payments once we sold your house. Mom gasped. You didn't tell me that. He said it was short-term, Dad said defensively. I didn't think he'd come after us. I ran a hand through my hair, panic rising. Dad, this guy's dangerous. You should have gone to the police. He's not the kind of man you go to the police about, Dad said grimly. He knows people. If he says 48 hours, he means it. The air felt colder suddenly, like the whole park had gone still. Where is he now? I asked. Dad looked at me, fear in his eyes. He said he's coming to town tomorrow. My mind raced. This wasn't just about property anymore. This was about something far bigger and far more dangerous than I'd ever imagined. Mom gripped my hand. Ethan, please, don't get involved. But I was already thinking of ways to protect them, even after everything they'd done. Because no matter how much they had hurt me, they were still my parents. And I couldn't let them get hurt. That night I couldn't sleep. My thoughts kept circling back to that message. You took my money. I want it back. I sat at my desk, the glow of my laptop casting shadows on the walls. I searched everything I could find about Mike Reynolds. There were rumors of fraud, shady deals, lawsuits that never went anywhere. The man was poison. By midnight, I had a plan forming in my head. I didn't know if it would work, but it was all I had. At 1 a.m., I picked up the phone and called my lawyer again. Thomas, I said, I need to know how to freeze an account without alerting the other party. He hesitated. Ethan, what are you getting into? Just tell me what I need to know. There was a pause. Then he sighed. All right, but be careful. You're playing with fire. I hung up and leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. Fire. That's exactly what it felt like. And somewhere deep down I knew this wasn't the end of my parents' mess. It was just the beginning. The day after I discovered the papers hidden in my mother's drawer, I didn't go to work. I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago, staring out at the neighborhood that used to be mine. The street was quiet, just the occasional bark of a dog or the hum of a passing car. Everything felt unreal, like I'd slipped into someone else's life. They'd really sold my house. My home. The thought alone made my hands tremble around the mug. The papers were official, signed and stamped. I had already checked the county registry website the night before. The ownership had changed. The house I'd worked so hard to buy, the one I'd dreamed about since college, was now under someone else's name. And worse, it had been my own parents who'd done it. My mind spun in circles, replaying the past months over and over, trying to make sense of it all. When I called home from London, my parents always sounded so proud. My mom would say things like, "You're doing so well, honey. We're so proud of you." My dad would ask, "When are you coming back? Your house misses you." They knew exactly what they were doing while saying those words. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the way they smiled through it. For a while, I thought about calling them right then, shouting, demanding answers. But every time I imagined it, my chest tightened. I didn't want to scream. I wanted them to feel what I was feeling. So instead, I stayed quiet. The next day, I started digging deeper. I visited the county records office downtown. The woman at the desk was polite, tapping on her keyboard and pulling up my property file. "Yes, looks like it was sold about 4 months ago," she said casually, turning her monitor slightly. "Do you need a copy of the transaction?" "Yes, please," I said, keeping my voice steady. The document printed out with a soft whir, and as she handed it to me, I saw the buyer's name, Michael Hayes. Someone I didn't know. The sale price was almost half of what the house was worth. I blinked in disbelief. "Is this right?" I asked. She nodded. It happens sometimes when people sell privately. Maybe they needed to sell fast. I forced a smile, thanked her, and walked out. My hands were shaking so badly that I almost dropped the papers on the sidewalk. Half the value. My parents hadn't just sold it, they'd practically given it away. When I got home, I sat at my kitchen table and opened my laptop. I looked up Michael Hayes. It didn't take long to find out who he was, a middle-aged man with a modest profile picture on social media, a family, a dog, and a few photos of home renovations. One post caught my eye. "Finally bought our dream home. Couldn't believe we got it for such a great deal. Big thanks to the sellers for making it easy." The photo attached made my stomach drop. It was my house. The porch swing I had built. The garden I had planted. The blue shutters I'd chosen myself. The comments under the post were full of congratulations and heart emojis. People calling it a blessing and a miracle deal. I closed the laptop and leaned back in my chair, feeling a mix of grief and anger that I didn't even know how to describe. How could they do this? I thought about the times my parents had borrowed money from me over the years, for repairs, bills, emergencies. I had always helped, no questions asked. I thought they were struggling, that maybe one day when things got better, they'd repay me somehow. I never expected anything back. But this was beyond forgiveness. For the next few weeks, I stayed quiet, pretending nothing had happened. I wanted to gather every bit of information before confronting them. I started visiting their neighborhood again, driving past their house late in the evenings, just to think. Their home looked untouched, peaceful, a well-kept lawn, warm lights glowing through the curtains. From the outside, it looked like a perfect picture of family comfort. But to me, it was just a house built on lies now. One night, I parked a little further down the street and watched my parents through the window. They were laughing, eating dinner together. My mom poured wine into my dad's glass, and he leaned over to kiss her cheek. I felt something harden inside me. They didn't look like people burdened by guilt. They looked happy. And that's when I realized they probably didn't even regret it. They probably told themselves they had a right to sell my house. Maybe they thought they were helping themselves to what I owed them for raising me. The thought made me clench the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I drove home that night with one thought looping through my mind. They took my home. But I'll take theirs. But I didn't want revenge in a cruel or illegal way. No, I wanted to do it legally. I wanted them to know what it felt like to lose everything and not be able to stop it, the same way they made me feel. So, I started planning. First, I needed to understand their financial situation. I knew they'd refinanced their house a few years ago, but I didn't know how much they still owed. Luckily, the mailbox wasn't hard to access. One afternoon, when I knew they were out at church, I walked by and noticed a thick envelope sticking out, a mortgage statement. My hands shook as I took a quick photo of it before slipping it back. The balance was much higher than I expected. They had less than 10 years left on their loan, but the payments were steep. My dad was retired, and my mom only worked part-time. They must have been struggling to keep up, which explained why they were desperate enough to sell my house. Still, that didn't excuse what they'd done. With that information, I started talking to a real estate lawyer, pretending it was about a friend's situation. I asked questions about power of attorney, property transfers, and ways to legally acquire property in cases of unpaid loans or back taxes. The lawyer gave me enough insight to start seeing a path forward. It wasn't simple, but it was possible. Weeks passed, and I continued to build my plan quietly. I paid off my remaining debts, tightened my budget, and even picked up freelance work at night. I was determined to get the funds I needed. During that time, my parents called a few times, mostly about small talk. "How's work? When are you visiting again?" I answered politely, keeping my tone calm. Inside, every word from them felt like a knife twisting deeper. Then one Sunday afternoon, my mom called again. "Hey, sweetie," she said cheerfully. "We haven't seen you in so long. Why don't you come over for dinner next weekend? Your dad's been asking about you." I hesitated. "Sure," I said slowly. "I'll come by." The day of the dinner, I drove over with my heart pounding. The house looked just like always. My dad greeted me at the door with a big smile. "There's my boy," he said, clapping me on the shoulder. For a moment, I wanted to break down and ask why. But I swallowed it. I wasn't ready for that confrontation yet. Dinner was quiet. My mom asked about my job, my friends. My dad talked about his golf group. Not once did they mention the house. Not a word about the papers, the sale, or the money. It was almost like it never happened. After dinner, my mom made coffee, and my dad turned on the TV. I excused myself to make a call and walked around the house, looking at the family photos. Each one felt like a reminder of a life that didn't exist anymore. When I walked back into the kitchen, I paused. My mom was talking softly on the phone. Her voice was low, but I caught a few words. "He still doesn't know. Yes, it went through smoothly. No, he hasn't said anything." My stomach flipped. She was talking about me. When she noticed me standing there, she jumped slightly and quickly hung up. "Oh, you scared me," she said, smiling nervously. "Who were you talking to?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Just your aunt," she replied quickly. She was asking about the family. I nodded, pretending to believe her. But my mind was racing. When I left that night, I knew two things for sure. My parents were still hiding things, and they thought I was clueless. But not for long. Over the next few months, I started gathering everything I needed. I found out that my parents' mortgage had been refinanced under a joint account, meaning if I became part of that account legally, I could influence what happened to their property. It wasn't easy, and I had to be patient. My plan wasn't about revenge through rage. It was about justice, about balance. One evening, while reviewing documents on my laptop, I got a call from my old friend, Lisa, a financial advisor. She had helped me with my home purchase years ago. I decided to tell her everything. When I finished, she was silent for a moment. Then she said, "You know what you're doing isn't just revenge. It's teaching them what it feels like to be powerless. Just be careful, okay? Don't lose yourself in it." "I won't," I promised. But even as I said it, a part of me wasn't sure anymore. Weeks turned into months, and slowly, pieces began to fall into place. My parents' situation was worse than I imagined. Missed payments, late fees, overdue taxes. They were drowning in quiet debt, and I was about to become the storm they never saw coming. Then, one afternoon, I got the call that set everything into motion. It was from the county clerk's office. "Mr. Collins," the woman said, "you requested a notification for any new property liens under your parents' address, correct?" "Yes," I said cautiously. "Well," she said, "there's been a recent filing. Looks like their mortgage company initiated foreclosure proceedings due to missed payments." My breath caught. It was happening. The opportunity one had been waiting for had just landed in my hands. I hung up the phone and stared at the ceiling, heart pounding. This was it. The moment I could change everything. They had taken my house from me. Now, legally and quietly, I was about to take theirs. And they wouldn't even see it coming. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual, my heart pounding with a strange mix of excitement and guilt. The sunlight poured in through my bedroom window, painting golden lines across the walls. I sat up slowly, staring at my phone, replaying the call from the county clerk over and over in my mind. Foreclosure proceedings. The words felt unreal, almost too perfect, like the universe had decided to hand me the opportunity I'd been waiting for. For months, I had lived with the weight of betrayal pressing against my chest. My parents had stolen from me, not just money or a house, but trust. The kind of trust you can never rebuild once it's broken. And now, for the first time since that discovery, the balance was shifting. Still, a part of me hesitated. These were my parents, after all. The same people who'd packed my lunches, taught me how to ride a bike, and stood proudly at my college graduation. The thought of taking away their home, the one they'd lived in for over 20 years, made something deep inside me ache. But then I thought of my house, my home, the one I worked 2 jobs to buy, the one they sold behind my back while I was halfway across the world, the one that held my memories, my effort, my future. And suddenly, that ache hardened into resolve. I couldn't let emotions cloud my judgment now. So, I brewed a pot of coffee, opened my laptop, and began researching the foreclosure process in detail. I learned about auctions, redemption rights, and how third-party buyers could step in to purchase a foreclosed property. The more I read, the clearer my plan became. If I played my cards right, I could legally buy my parents' home at auction, and they would never know it was me until it was too late. The idea felt cruel, but strangely satisfying. Later that day, I decided to visit the property in person. I drove down the familiar road leading to their house, a quiet street lined with old oaks and well-tended lawns. The sight of their house made my stomach twist. The white paint had faded, the flower beds were overgrown, and the mailbox leaned slightly to one side. I parked across the street, watching as my dad stepped outside to water the lawn. He looked older than I remembered, gray hair, slow movements, a limp he never used to have. My mom joined him a few minutes later, handing him a glass of lemonade. They laughed about something I couldn't hear. It should have made me angry, but instead, for a brief second, I felt a pang of sadness. They looked happy, peaceful. I almost drove away right then. But then I thought of the day I came home from the airport, only to find strangers living in my house. I thought of the papers I found in my mom's drawer. I thought of the phone call I overheard, where she lied about me. And just like that, the sadness turned to fire again. I rolled up my window and drove off. That evening, I called the county clerk's office again to confirm the foreclosure details. The woman on the phone told me the sale date hadn't been set yet, but it would likely happen within 2 months if the payments weren't caught up. 2 months. That gave me time to prepare. Over the next few weeks, I became obsessed. I called banks, spoke to attorneys, and saved every penny I could. I even pulled from my 401k, convincing myself that it wasn't revenge, it was justice. I found a small firm downtown that specialized in property auctions. The attorney, Mr. Harper, was a middle-aged man with a calm, steady demeanor. When I told him I wanted to buy a property that was about to go into foreclosure, without revealing it was my parents', he nodded thoughtfully. "Smart move, if you can handle the paperwork," he said. "But remember, foreclosures can be unpredictable. Sometimes, owners pay off their debt last minute. Sometimes they fight it in court." "I understand," I said. He smiled faintly. "Then let's make sure you're ready when the time comes." We spent hours going over forms, strategies, and financial details. I learned more about real estate law in those few weeks than I ever had before. Every step brought me closer to the moment I'd been waiting for. Still, guilt lingered like a shadow I couldn't shake. One night, as I sat on my couch surrounded by paperwork, I got a text from my mom. "Mom, hi sweetheart. We haven't heard from you in a while. Everything okay?" I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. "Me? Yeah, just busy with work. Hope you and Dad are doing well." A few seconds later, her reply came. "Mom, we're doing fine, just tired. Your dad's been stressed lately. Mortgage stuff, you know how it is." My heart tightened. They were feeling it, the pressure, the consequences of their choices. And I wasn't even involved yet. For the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about that text. What if they were struggling so much that they'd sold my house out of desperation? What if it wasn't greed, but survival? I wrestled with that thought endlessly. But every time I started to feel sympathy, I remembered how they'd never even told me. They'd smiled to my face, laughed with me on the phone, and acted like everything was fine, all while betraying me in the worst way possible. No, I couldn't forgive that. Not yet. 2 weeks later, I got another call from the clerk's office. The foreclosure sale date had been set. It was scheduled for a Thursday morning at the courthouse downtown. I thanked the woman, hung up, and leaned back in my chair. My hands were trembling, my heart racing. This was it. The chance to finally take control, legally, cleanly, and completely. Over the next few days, I prepared everything. I arranged the necessary funds, double-checked the paperwork, and even visited the courthouse once beforehand to get a feel for the process. When the day finally came, I woke up before dawn. The world outside was still dark, the air crisp and cold. I dressed in a black suit, not because I had to, but because it felt symbolic, like I was attending the funeral of something that had already died a long time ago. My trust in them. The courthouse, the atmosphere was strangely quiet. A small group of people gathered in the hallway, each one holding documents or talking quietly with their lawyers. The auctioneer stood at the front, calling out property addresses one by one. When it was time for my parents' house, I held my breath. The auctioneer began the bidding. The opening bid was shockingly low, less than half of what the property was worth. A few bidders joined in, raising the price in steady increments. I waited, calm, letting them tire themselves out. When the bidding started to slow, I raised my paddle for the first time. "All right, we have a new bidder," the auctioneer said. "Going once, going twice." Someone else counted, a man in a gray jacket. I counted back, steady and confident. The price rose again. The man hesitated, glanced at his papers, and lowered his paddle. "Sold," the auctioneer announced. To bidder number 14. My chest tightened. I'd done it. In that moment, I owned my parents' house, legally, officially, and without them having any idea. I signed the papers, shaking slightly, and handed over the certified check. The clerk congratulated me and gave me the deed packet. As I walked out of the courthouse, the morning sunlight hit my face. For a second, I felt victorious, but the feeling didn't last. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept picturing my parents sitting in their living room, completely unaware that everything around them now belonged to me. The guilt gnawed at me, but I reminded myself why I was doing it, not out of hatred, but to teach them a lesson. Still, something about it didn't feel right. A week later, a letter was sent to their address, the official foreclosure notice confirming the sale and the new ownership. I knew it would arrive soon, maybe the next day. And for the first time, I wondered what would happen when they opened it. Would they cry? Would they blame each other? Would they think about me? I didn't know. All I knew was that the moment was coming, the moment when they'd realize what they'd done had come full circle. But fate, it seemed, had a way of complicating things. 2 days later, I got a call. It was my mom. Her voice was trembling. "Ethan," she said softly. "Something happened. We got a letter today. It says our house has been sold. But we don't understand how. The bank said." She stopped, her breath catching. "I don't know what's going on," she whispered. "We're so scared." I closed my eyes, gripping the phone tightly. Every instinct told me to stay silent, to let the plan play out. But hearing her voice crack like that, it hurt more than I expected. I forced my tone to stay calm. "I'm sure it's just a mix-up," I said. "You should probably call the bank tomorrow." "We already did," she said quickly. "They said the house was sold at auction. But we didn't even know it got that far." Her voice broke again. "Ethan, what are we going to do?" I didn't answer right away. My throat felt tight. "Just don't panic," I said finally. "You'll figure something out." When I hung up, I sat there in silence, the guilt heavier than ever. This was the first time I'd heard genuine fear in my mother's voice. But I reminded myself, they'd made their choices. They'd lied, manipulated, and sold the home I loved without blinking. Maybe now they'd finally understand how it felt. Still, as I lay in bed that night, I couldn't shake the image of them sitting together, holding that letter in shaking hands. The next morning, I decided to drive by their house, my house, technically, to see for myself. When I got there, my dad was outside, pacing the front yard. My mom was sitting on the porch steps, her face pale and tired. I parked a few houses down and watched from inside my car. They looked broken. A part of me wanted to get out, to tell them it was all a test, to say I'd fix everything. But before I could even open my door, I saw something that stopped me cold. A black sedan pulled up in front of the house. 2 men in suits stepped out, carrying a clipboard and a folder. One of them approached my dad and started talking. My dad's expression went from confusion to shock to devastation. My mom stood up, tears running down her face. And that's when I realized the real consequences were just beginning. What I had started was no longer just a plan for revenge. It was a storm, and I wasn't sure anyone, not even me, could stop it. Now when I finally arrived at the old family home, I wasn't sure what I expected to find. Maybe the house looking smaller than I remembered, or maybe some neighbor giving me that pitiful look, the kind that says, "You poor thing, you've been through enough." But what I saw instead hit me harder than I could have imagined. The front yard was overgrown, the grass reaching up to my knees. The white paint on the porch railings had peeled away, and the for sale sign that my parents once used for my house was now sitting in their front window. A real estate flyer hung from the mailbox, weather-beaten and curling at the edges. For a few seconds, I just stood there, staring at it all. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had just finalized the paperwork to legally transfer ownership of this house. I hadn't done it out of cruelty. I did it because they had done the same to me. They had turned my life upside down without remorse, and now they were going to understand what that felt like. Still, standing there, seeing it with my own eyes, my chest tightened. This was where I had grown up, where my mom used to bake cookies on Sunday mornings, and my dad would sit on the porch, reading the newspaper and pretending not to nap. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. This isn't revenge. This is justice. That I opened the gate and walked up the cracked path toward the door. The house smelled like dust and lemon cleaner. They tried to make it look nice for showings, probably. But it also smelled empty, like no one had really lived there for a while. Then I heard footsteps behind me. "Excuse me," a woman's voice said. I turned around. A middle-aged lady with kind eyes and a clipboard was standing at the gate. "Hi, are you here for the showing? I can give you a tour if you'd like." I swallowed hard. The real estate agent. Actually," I said, "I'm the owner." Her eyebrows shot up. "Oh, I didn't realize. Are you Mr. Harper's son?" I nodded slowly. "Yeah, Ethan Harper." She gave me a polite but surprised smile. "Ah, I see. Well, congratulations on the sale. I heard the paperwork went through last week." "Yeah," I said quietly. "It did." She started to walk back to her car. "I'll let you take your time. The buyers are coming for the final inspection later today, so if you need to grab anything, I'd do it soon. I just nodded. My heart felt like it was stuck in my throat. The buyers, the new owners, were coming today. Everything was moving faster than I expected. I stepped inside the living room and looked around. The furniture was still there, the old brown sofa, the glass coffee table, even the faded rug that Mom refused to throw away. But now, it all looked temporary, like a memory that didn't belong to me anymore. I walked to my old room. The posters I had on the wall were long gone, replaced by beige paint. I touched the wall where the corner of my desk used to be. For a moment, I was 16 again, staying up late studying, while Mom would knock softly and tell me to sleep. Then the sound of a car engine pulled me back to the present. I looked out the window and saw my parents' car pulling into the driveway. My pulse spiked. I hadn't seen them since I'd found out what they'd done. I'd been ignoring their calls and texts for weeks. I wasn't sure I was ready for this, but maybe I needed to be. The car doors slammed shut. My mom stepped out first, wearing sunglasses and clutching her purse like a shield. My dad followed, looking tired, older than I remembered. They both froze when they saw me standing in the doorway. "Ethan," my mom said, her voice shaking. What are you doing here?" I took a deep breath. I could ask you the same thing. My dad's jaw tightened. "We thought you were still abroad." "Yeah, I bet you did," I said bitterly. "Makes it easier to sell your son's house when he's thousands of miles away, doesn't it?" Mom's face crumpled. "Ethan, please, we didn't." "Didn't what?" "Didn't mean to ruin my life. Didn't mean to take the one thing I worked for." My voice was rising. "You knew what you were doing. You sold it because you thought I'd just accept it." My dad stepped forward, his voice firm. "We were helping you. You were wasting your money, living in a house that needed repairs, struggling to keep up. We thought." "You thought you knew better than me," I interrupted. "You thought you could control my life like I was still a kid." There was silence. Then I looked right at them and said, "Well, now you know how it feels." Mom blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean," I said quietly, "you don't own this house anymore." For a second, neither of them moved. Then Dad frowned. "What are you talking about?" "I bought it," I said. "Legally. It's mine now. The sale went through last week." The color drained from Mom's face. She looked at Dad like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. "You bought our house," she whispered. "Yes," I said. "The same way you sold mine." The room went silent. The ticking clock on the wall was the only sound. I could see the shock in their faces, the confusion, the anger, and something else too. Fear. Dad's voice broke the silence. "You had no right." "I had every right," I snapped. "You sold something that wasn't yours to sell. You used my name, my trust, my money. I didn't even have a place to live when I came back. So I made sure you'd understand what that felt like." Mom took a shaky step toward me. "Ethan, please. We made a mistake. We were trying to. Help me." I cut in. "Don't. Just don't say that. You weren't helping me. You were helping yourselves. You wanted control. You always did." I could feel my voice trembling, not from anger, but from the weight of everything that had happened. Dad looked like he wanted to yell, but instead, he just said quietly, "You'll regret this." I didn't answer. He turned away, walked to the front door, and slammed it behind him. Mom stayed for a moment, tears running down her face. "Ethan," she whispered, "you've become just like us." I didn't know what to say. She left without another word. I stood there alone, the silence heavier than ever. For the first time since I'd returned, I didn't feel victorious. I felt hollow. Was this what revenge was supposed to feel like? As I walked outside, I saw the real estate agent talking to a young couple near the gate, the buyers. They looked so happy, excited to start a new life. I watched them for a moment, wondering if they'd make better memories here than we did. I should have felt satisfaction. Instead, I felt something else creeping in guilt. But before I could process it, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my sister, Amy. "Amy, Ethan, call me right now. It's about Mom. Something's happened." My heart dropped. I ran to my car, adrenaline flooding my veins. My hands were shaking as I tried to start the engine. Something in me knew this wasn't just another argument or some emotional plea. This was serious. As I sped down the road, I kept replaying my mom's last words in my head. "You've become just like us." And for the first time, I started to wonder if she was right. But I didn't have time to think about that anymore, because when I reached the hospital, what I saw there would change everything. And it would make me question whether revenge had really been worth it at all. The hospital parking lot was crowded, the kind of chaos that only happens when every minute feels like it could change someone's life. I parked crookedly across 2 spaces, barely remembering to turn off the ignition before bolting toward the sliding glass doors. Inside, the air smelled like antiseptic and stale coffee. The lights were too bright. My shoes squeaked on the polished floor as I rushed to the reception desk. "Excuse me," I said breathlessly. "I'm looking for Rebecca Harper. She was brought in a few minutes ago. Please, she's my mother." The nurse behind the counter typed something on her computer, her expression calm in that practiced hospital way that made me even more anxious. "Rebecca Harper, yes. She's in the emergency department. Room 214. Straight down the hall and to your left." "Thank you," I said, already running before she could finish. My mind was racing. Just an hour ago, we'd been yelling at each other in that old house. She looked perfectly fine. Angry, yes, but healthy. What could have happened in such a short time? When I reached room 214, my sister Amy was sitting outside on one of the plastic chairs, her face pale and her eyes red. "Amy," I said, breathless. "What happened? Is she okay?" She looked up, and for a moment, she just stared at me like she didn't even recognize who I was. Then her voice cracked. "She collapsed, Ethan. Right after you left. Dad called the ambulance." I froze. "Collapsed? From what?" Amy wiped her eyes. "The doctor said it might have been a panic attack or stress-related heart issues. She's stable now, but they're keeping her for observation." I leaned against the wall, trying to catch my breath. A part of me wanted to feel sorry, to go in there and tell her I didn't mean for any of this to happen. But another part, the one still wounded and bitter, kept whispering, "She started this. She sold your house. She ruined your life first." Amy stood and folded her arms, her eyes sharp. "What did you say to them?" I looked at her, confused. "What?" "When you saw them," she pressed. "What did you say, Ethan?" "Dad said you told them you bought the house. That it wasn't theirs anymore." "I didn't just say it," I admitted. "It's true." Her face twisted in disbelief. "You're kidding, right?" "No. I bought it. Legally. The same way they sold mine." Amy stared at me for a long moment, like she was trying to find the brother she used to know somewhere behind the man standing in front of her. "Ethan, what's happened to you? What's happened to me?" I snapped. "They sold my house, Amy. The one I worked years to buy. They didn't even tell me. I came home and everything was gone. You expect me to just smile and move on?" She took a shaky breath. "No. But I didn't expect you to become them, either." Her words stung, mostly because they echoed what Mom had said just before she collapsed. Amy turned toward the door. "You should see her. She keeps asking for you." I hesitated for a moment, then slowly walked into the room. Mom was lying in the bed, hooked up to a monitor that beeped softly. Her face looked pale, her hands frail against the white sheets. When she saw me, her eyes welled up instantly. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice weak but trembling. "You came." I pulled a chair up beside her bed. "Yeah." Amy called me. For a few seconds, we just sat there, the only sound being the rhythmic beep of the monitor. Then she said softly, "I'm sorry." I blinked, not sure I'd heard right. "For what?" I asked. "For everything," she said, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Selling your house, keeping it from you, thinking we knew better. We didn't. We were scared, Ethan. You were gone for so long. We thought you'd never come back. The bills, your father panicked. He thought selling it would help." Her voice cracked. "We didn't realize how much it would hurt you." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But the bitterness that had built up inside me for months wasn't easy to let go of. "Why didn't you just talk to me?" I asked quietly. "Why did you go behind my back?" She closed her eyes. "Because we didn't want you to say no." That answer hit me harder than I expected. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. "You really didn't trust me, who?" She squeezed my hand weakly. "We were wrong." For a moment, I let her hold my hand. Despite everything, she was still my mom, and seeing her like that, Weak, vulnerable, human, softened something inside me. But before I could say anything else, Dad walked in. His face was stiff, his eyes avoiding mine. He stood by the foot of the bed, silent for a moment, before finally saying, "The doctors say she'll be fine. They just want to keep her overnight." Mom smiled faintly. "Good. Maybe it'll give us all time to calm down." Dad didn't respond. He just turned to me and said coldly, "You've done enough." That old anger flared back up. "You mean I have done enough? You're the one who started this. Dad, you're the one who taught me that family doesn't mean trust anymore." His jaw clenched. "You've always had to make everything dramatic. We made a mistake, and you turned it into a vendetta." "A vendetta?" I shot back. "You took my home. You left me with nothing. Don't you dare lecture me about vendettas." Mom's voice broke the tension, trembling but firm. "Stop it, both of you." We went silent immediately. She looked between us, her eyes tired. "I don't care who's right or wrong anymore. I just want this family to stop tearing itself apart." Neither of us said anything. The doctor entered a moment later, giving us an excuse to step out. Amy stayed with Mom while Dad and I stood awkwardly in the hallway. He finally said, "You should fix this, Ethan." I looked at him. "Fix what?" "This house situation," he said. "Return it. We'll buy it back. Whatever you want." I crossed my arms. "It's not about money." He sighed. "Everything's about money, Ethan. It always has been. You wouldn't understand what your mother and I were going through." I cut him off. "No, you don't get to use that excuse. You had choices. You just didn't like that I was finally making mine." He looked like he wanted to argue, but instead he just shook his head and walked away. I leaned against the wall, running a hand over my face. Everything was unraveling faster than I could keep up. The revenge that had felt so satisfying a few hours ago now just felt like a weight. That night, I stayed in the hospital lobby. I couldn't bring myself to go home, not to my apartment, and not to their house. I sat there for hours, watching the fluorescent lights hum and flicker. At some point around 2 a.m., Amy came down. She handed me a cup of coffee and sat beside me. "She's asleep," she said softly. "Good," I murmured. We sat in silence for a while. Then she asked, "What are you going to do now?" I stared at the dark liquid in my cup. "I don't know. I thought this would make me feel better. It doesn't." Amy nodded slowly. "Revenge usually doesn't." I looked at her. "You sound like Mom." She smiled faintly. "Maybe she's right, though. Maybe this is our chance to fix things." "Fix what?" I asked. "Everything's already broken." She leaned back, sighing. "Maybe not beyond repair." The next morning, I left the hospital before they woke up. I drove around for hours, thinking. The sun was rising, the city still quiet. I ended up at a small park near the river, a place Mom used to take us when we were kids. I sat on a bench, watching the water flow. For the first time in months, I let myself think about what I'd lost. Not the house, not the money, but the connection. The trust, the feeling of family. And then, just as I started to feel some clarity, my phone buzzed again. It was a text from the real estate agent. "Agent, Ethan, the buyers of your parents' house have backed out unexpectedly. They said something about a conflict with the previous owners. Do you know what that's about?" I frowned. Conflict. Then another message came in, this time from an unknown number. "Unknown. You think you've won, but you don't even know what's coming next." My stomach dropped. I didn't recognize the number, but something about it felt familiar. My first thought was my dad, but no, this didn't sound like him. Before I could reply, another message came through. "Unknown. You shouldn't have messed with family, Ethan. Now, you'll lose more than just a house." A chill ran down my spine. I looked around the park, half expecting to see someone watching me. Whoever this was, they weren't bluffing. And in that moment, I realized the war wasn't over. It was just beginning. The phone screen glowed in my hand, its blue light cutting through the gray morning fog like a blade. "Unknown. You shouldn't have messed with family, Ethan. Now, you'll lose more than just a house." I stayed at it for a long time, rereading the words until they blurred. My heart was pounding hard enough that I could feel it in my throat. Whoever this was, they knew too much. I looked around the park again, the benches, the trees, the old man walking his dog, trying to spot anyone who might be watching me. But everyone looked normal. Too normal. I typed back quickly. Ethan, who is this? No response. I waited. 30 seconds. A minute. 2 minutes. Still nothing. Finally, I slipped the phone into my jacket pocket and tried to breathe. Maybe it was just some random scammer. Or maybe Dad had found some twisted way to keep playing mind games that I didn't want to believe it was him, but given everything that had happened, it wasn't impossible. I drove back to my apartment, half expecting to find someone waiting there. But it was empty, quiet. My mind wouldn't stop spinning, though. Whoever had sent that message had said, "You'll lose more than just a house." That meant they knew about the sale. And only a few people did. My parents, Amy, and the real estate agent. Unless someone else had found out. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and checked my email. There were a few new messages, mostly spam, but one caught my eye. The subject line read, "You went too far." My stomach twisted as I clicked it open. Ethan, you think you're justified? But destroying your family's life isn't justice, it's cruelty. People talk, and word travels fast. You might want to watch who you trust. There was no name, no signature. But the email address looked familiar. HarperFamilyTrust@Outlook.com. It hit me like a slap. That was the same email my father had used years ago for our joint family savings account, the one that helped pay for our house. Except, I knew Dad barely used email anymore. He hated technology. So if it wasn't him, who was it? I opened my phone and dialed Amy. She answered on the second ring, sounding tired. "Hey, Ethan. How's your head?" "I'm fine," I said quickly. "Listen, do you know anything about a Harper Family Trust email address?" There was a pause. "Why? I just got an email from it. It wasn't Dad, was it?" She hesitated. "No. He doesn't even know how to use that account anymore. I think he forgot the password ages ago." "So who's using it? Why, what's going on?" I sighed. "Someone's sending me threats. They know about the house." Her voice softened. "Ethan, maybe this is a sign to stop." "I can't stop now," I said. "Not until I know who's behind this." Amy exhaled sharply. "I'll look into it. But please, don't do anything stupid." "I won't," I lied. As soon as we hung up, I started digging through my old files, searching for any record connected to that family trust email. I eventually found a PDF from years ago, the account registration form. It had both my parents' signatures, and one more. Amy Harper. I froze. My sister had full access to that account. At first, I refused to believe it. Amy had always been the calm one, the peacekeeper. She'd been furious with our parents when they sold my house. She comforted me when I came home. She was the one person I still trusted. But then I remembered her words at the hospital. "Maybe you've become them. Maybe that wasn't just disappointment. Maybe it was something deeper, guilt." Could she have been the one sending those messages? I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but the thought wouldn't leave my head. I decided to pay her a visit. When I pulled up outside her apartment, her car was in the driveway. I knocked, trying to keep my heartbeat steady. She opened the door, her expression softening when she saw me. "Hey, you look like you haven't slept." "I haven't," I said quietly. "Can we talk?" "Of course. Come in." Her apartment smelled like coffee and cinnamon, just like it always did. It felt safe, familiar. That made me even more uneasy. I sat at the kitchen table while she poured us both a cup of coffee. "Okay," she said, sitting across from me. "What's going on?" I slid my phone across the table. "Read this." She looked at the text messages, then the email I had forwarded to her. Her face didn't change much, but her hand froze halfway to her cup. "Do you know anything about this?" I asked. "No," she said quickly. "Of course not. But that email, the one that sent it, that's our old family trust. The one you still have access to." Her eyes flickered, just for a second, before she forced a calm smile. "Ethan, you're tired. You're paranoid. Maybe someone hacked it. Don't lie to me, Amy." Her hand trembled slightly as she put down the cup. "Ethan, I didn't send those messages." "Then who did?" She didn't answer. The silence stretched between us, heavy and sharp. Finally, she said quietly, "You need to stop this war with Mom and Dad. It's tearing everything apart." "So you did send them," I said. She looked away. "I just wanted you to stop before someone really got hurt." My chest tightened. "You thought threatening me would fix that?" She sighed, her voice cracking. "You weren't listening to me, Ethan. You've changed. You're not the brother I grew up with. You're angry, and it's eating you alive." I stood, pacing across the kitchen. "You think I don't know that? You think I wanted any of this? Then end it," she shouted suddenly. "Give the house back. Talk to them, before this destroys what's left of our family." Her words hit me like a storm. I didn't even know how to respond. "Finally," I said, "you went behind my back. You pretended to help me, and then you tried to scare me into doing what you thought was right. You're no different from them." She looked like I'd slapped her. "Ethan," but I was already heading for the door. "Don't call me again," I said without turning around. I slammed the door behind me. Outside, the sun was setting, a dull orange bleeding into the horizon. My hands were shaking as I got into my car. Everything I'd thought I knew was unraveling. First my parents, now my sister. I drove aimlessly, the city blurring past me. I didn't even know where I was going until I realized I was back near my parents' old house. The "for sale" sign had been taken down. The windows were dark. For a moment, I just sat there, staring at it. Then I noticed something odd. The front door was slightly open. My pulse quickened. The real estate agent wouldn't have left it like that. The buyers had backed out. No one should have been there. I got out of the car, walked quietly up the path, and pushed the door open. The living room was dark, except for the faint glow of a lamp in the corner. Then I heard a voice. "I told you, this wasn't supposed to happen." My father's voice. I froze. He was talking on the phone somewhere in the kitchen. "Yes, I know. But the boy's gone too far now. We'll handle it our way." Our way. I inched closer, careful not to make a sound. He continued, his voice low. "I can't have him ruining the rest of our finances. If he doesn't listen, we'll make him listen. You understand?" The line went quiet for a moment, then he muttered, "Good. Keep it discreet." My mind was spinning. Handle it our way. What did that mean? Was this about the house, or something bigger? Before I could step back, I accidentally brushed against a small side table. The vase on it rattled, and then toppled over, shattering on the floor. My father spun around. "Who's there?" I froze. "Ethan." His voice hardened. "What are you doing here?" I stepped out of the shadows. "I could ask you the same thing." He glanced at the broken vase, then at the phone, still in his hand. "You shouldn't be here." "Neither should you," I said. "This house isn't yours anymore." He glared at me. "You think you've won because you signed a few papers? You don't even know what you're involved in, boy." "What's that supposed to mean?" But he didn't answer. He just put the phone in his pocket and brushed past me toward the door. "Dad," I said sharply, grabbing his arm. "Who were you talking to?" He yanked free, his eyes cold. "You'll find out soon enough." And with that, he walked out into the night, leaving me alone in the house. For a long moment, I just stood there, surrounded by silence. And then my phone buzzed again. "Unknown, you shouldn't have come here." My heart skipped. I ran to the window and looked outside, but all I saw were shadows and the faint glint of headlights disappearing down the road. Whoever this was, whoever my father was talking to, they were still watching. And I suddenly realized that what I thought was a simple family feud might have been something much bigger all along. Something that could destroy more than just our trust. Something that could destroy everything that I could barely sleep that night. My apartment felt too small, too quiet, and every time my phone buzzed, I jumped. Whoever had been sending those messages, whoever had whispered threats behind my back, they weren't done. Not yet. Morning came sluggishly, the sun dragging itself over the horizon like it too was exhausted from the tension in the city. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of black coffee, my laptop open, going through every email, every document, every financial record I could find connected to the family trust. Amy had promised she would help investigate. At least she had said she would, but she wasn't answering her phone. I wondered if she was avoiding me, or if something had happened. And then I realized something chilling. All the emails, all the threats, All the warnings I had received over the last week weren't random. Someone had inside information. Someone had access to family accounts, house records, legal documents. Someone who knew me, knew my parents, and knew exactly how far I would go. The thought made my hands tremble. I had to confront them. I got in my car and drove to the old neighborhood, to the house I had bought from my parents. The one that had started all this. The windows were dark, the garden untended, the for sale sign long gone. The house was silent, too silent. I stepped inside, my shoes echoing against the hardwood floors. I scanned the rooms, tense and alert. The silence was broken only by a soft humming from the kitchen. And then I saw her. Mom. She was standing at the counter, holding a cup of tea, her shoulders slumped as if weighed down by something far heavier than I could imagine. Ethan, she said softly, not turning around. I froze. Mom, what are you doing here? Where's Dad? She finally looked at me, her eyes red, haunted, and filled with a quiet resignation I had never seen before. He left early this morning. He had things to handle. Things he thinks you shouldn't know about yet. I stepped closer. Mom, please. I need to know the truth. Everything. Her hands trembled as she set the cup down. She sighed and sat at the kitchen table, motioning for me to sit across from her. You really want to know, don't you? Yes, I said, my voice firm. I need to know why you sold my house. Why Dad tried to scare me. Why Amy? Why all of this? Mom took a shaky breath. It wasn't just about your house, Ethan. It was never just about that. Your father, he's involved in things you can't even imagine. What do you mean? I asked, leaning forward. She looked away for a moment, lost in thought. Money isn't the problem. It's control. Dad, he's made deals over the years. Big ones. Ones that weren't just legal. They were risky. And he thought selling your house, taking control, keeping you in line, it would protect you. Protect us. I felt my chest tighten. Protect me? From what? Mom shook her head. From the consequences, Ethan. From the fallout if he lost one of his deals. He thought he was saving the family. But in doing so, he destroyed trust. He destroyed you. I didn't know whether to feel relief that I wasn't imagining everything, or rage that my family had been plotting behind my back all this time. And the threats. The emails. The texts. Her face paled. That was me. I didn't know what else to do. I thought if I could scare you into stopping the fight over the house, if I could make you see how dangerous this was, maybe we could avoid something worse. I slammed my hands on the table. You sent threats. You tried to scare me. I didn't want to. But I was scared too. Ethan, I was scared of losing you, scared of losing everything, and I didn't know another way. The weight of her confession hit me. I felt anger, yes, but also a strange sense of understanding. She wasn't entirely villainous. She was human. Flawed, yes, but human. And Amy? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Mom's eyes glistened with tears. She didn't send anything. She only warned you because she thought I was going too far. I never meant to involve her directly. I exhaled slowly, trying to steady my racing thoughts. So, everything, the house, the threats, the messages, it was all part of, what? Your plan to protect me. Mom nodded. Yes, and it got out of control. I got out of control. And I see now how wrong it was. Ethan, I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you like this. I wanted to scream, to cry, to throw the table across the room. But instead, I felt something shift inside me. A strange, cautious sense of closure. Mom, I don't know if I can forgive you, I said honestly. Not yet. But I understand a little more now. You weren't trying to be evil. You were trying to protect me in the only way you knew how. She reached across the table and took my hand. I know I broke your trust, and I don't expect you to forget. But I hope we can start to fix what's left. For a moment, the room was quiet, filled only with the soft hum of the refrigerator and the distant sounds of the city outside. Then, just as I felt a sliver of relief, my phone buzzed. It was another message. Unknown, you think you've uncovered everything. You don't know the half of it. I froze. Mum's eyes widened. Ethan, don't open that. But I did. The message contained a single photo. A photo of Dad, holding a stack of documents, a suitcase by his side, and a look in his eyes that was both cold and determined. The caption below read, "He's planning his next move. And this time, you won't see it coming." I stared at it in disbelief. Mum whispered, I think he's gone too far this time." The weight of what was happening hit me all at once. The revenge, the betrayal, the lies, it wasn't over. It would never be over until every secret was exposed. I put my phone down and took a deep breath. Then we stop running. Together. We face him. All of him. And we make sure nothing else, no more threats, no more lies, can hurt us again. Mom nodded, her hands gripping mine tightly. Yes. Together. A long silence passed. The air felt thick, heavy with anticipation. And then my mind clicked into place. I realized something. Dad had always underestimated me. He thought that by controlling the money, controlling the houses, controlling everyone around him, he could dictate how life played out. But he forgot one thing. I was smarter than he thought. Patient. Calculating. And I wasn't alone anymore. I leaned back, my eyes scanning the empty house, imagining the coming confrontation. For the first time, I felt in control. The next move would be his. But the last move, the final move, would be mine. I smiled faintly. Revenge had brought chaos. Betrayal had brought pain. But understanding, courage, and careful planning, that would bring victory. And this time, I would make sure it was absolute. As the sun set over the city, casting a golden glow through the windows, I sent one last message. Ethan, I'm ready. Let's end this. For good? Mom looked at me, confused. What did you just? I didn't answer. I just looked out the window, feeling the rush of power, clarity, and determination all at once. Because I knew something they didn't. The game had changed. And I had all the pieces. The next chapter of this war, the final one, was about to begin. And this time, no one would see it coming.